The first Epsom Derby winner trained at Ballydoyle was Larkspur, who won the Epsom Derby back in 1962, although his victory was marred a little by the fact that a mid-race melee took out the favourite Heatherset as well as 6 of his other rivals. Larkspur was the son of Never Say Die, who was the horse who provided a young Lester Piggott with his first Derby winner, and Lester Piggott, of course, was to become such a key cog in the whole Ballydoyle wheel. Larkspur was owned by Raymond Guest, who also owned Sir Ivor, who was the first truly great Epsom Derby winner trained at Ballydoyle. And Larkspur and Sir Ivor, they were 2 of Vincent O'Brien's 6 Derby winners, and that record was only matched in the post-war era by Aidan O'Brien when Wings of Eagles won the Derby last year. Vincent Rossiter was a key work rider with Vincent O'Brien during the Sir Ivor years, and he now takes up the story. Vincent, we're in the 50th anniversary of Sir Ivor's 50 years ago this year that he won the Derby. Can you believe that?
Very hard, because I still have the memories of him, and it doesn't feel like 50 years. Might look at me, but it's
Not at all.
It's not. It doesn't certainly feel like it.
You rode Sir Ivor in a lot of his work. What was he like as a racehorse?
Well, I mean, he was obviously a very, very good racehorse. He was a straightforward horse to ride. Didn't pull. He was relaxed in a way, and tremendous speed, which was one thing that was, I suppose, his advantage. I mean, he had speed. I think he would have probably won a July Cup if he was trained for one. But then all the good horses do have that sort of speed, But no, he was no problem.
And do you remember when he first came into the yard? Like, was there anything special about him when he first arrived?
He was a good-looking horse. He started to show. He ran his first race at the Curragh on the Derby meeting of that year. Liam Ward rode him.
You rode against him that day, didn't you?
I did. I rode a horse called Ballygorn, who was also owned by Raymond Guest. And I was second, actually, and the horse that actually beat him went on, and trained by Stephen Kirk, went on and won the following year's Irish 2,000 guineas. So, and Sir Ivor finished 5th, and when Liam came in, he said, he'll improve a lot from the race, and they'll never beat him again.
Right.
Which proved right, because about 2 weeks later at the Oaks meeting, he came back and he won a winner's race and beat a horse belonged to Mickey Rogers called Barnes Court, which they thought was very good, and he beat him easily. And then he went and he won the National Stakes at the Curragh, and then he went to Paris for the Grand Criterium, and Leicester rode him and he won very easy. And Leicester came back in, I remember, and said, "This is a machine."
Really?
And that was his last run then.
As a 2-year-old?
As a 2-year-old, yeah.
And going to the Grand Criterium at Longchamp, was that a done thing? Did many Irish horses go to France back then?
No, they wouldn't have been. I mean, I'd say he was the first Irish winner of the Criterium, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Aidan has won it several times, we know, since, but no, they wouldn't have been, no.
And why do you think, or do you remember Vincent decided to go there instead of going to the Dewhurst or going somewhere else?
I think he wanted Leicester to ride him, and Liam Ward had to ride him in his Irish races. Right. That was the contract. So I think he wanted Leicester to sit in him and see what he thought. Yeah. And have him, he'd ride him the following year's classics.
And did you notice an improvement in his work as the months were going by and he was gaining experience in racing?
Yeah, he did some very good work before he went to France. And then we took him to that year, the second year in a row that we wintered some of them initially. Yeah. And then we took them down to Pisa for 3 months in January, February and March.
What was that like?
Well, it was, look, the good horses that went down came back good, and the ones that were just ordinary, it didn't make an awful lot of difference. The problem with it was that the weather was quite good there in March, and we came back into a kind of a cold spring like we have this year, east wind, and their coats went a little bit backwards, so it wasn't that big an advantage. Right. So that's why Vincent O'Brien didn't do it anymore.
It was, obviously a lot of horses winter in Dubai these days, but Dr. O'Brien back then, he was always trying to find an edge, wasn't he?
He was. I mean, it was an experiment, and
Yeah.
we gave it a second go, and excuse me, he thought that for the expense and they were safer in Ballydoyle basically during the winter because it was quite an open place where we were stable, and they had to walk down a sort of a road down to the racetrack every morning and walk back, and that was, if anything went wrong, which it did one morning with Sir Ivor. We were going down, and there was a big Italian army camp quite near, and they were doing some manoeuvres. We were walking down, and suddenly this, I think it was a Centurion tank, they said, came up over this ditch, and Sir Ivor saw it and back, and fell into a drain that was next to where we were walking. I landed in the drain, he scrambled up. Lucky enough, Dr. O'Brien and the headman were down further with a car and saw what happened, so they caught him, but nothing happened. It was just lucky that none of us were injured in this episode.
Vincent, given that he won the National Stakes and the Grand Criterium, there must have been huge expectation of him going into his 3-year-old year.
Oh, there was, yes. He was favourite, second favourite for the Guineas, winter favourite.
So then he started off at Ascot, did he? He went in the Ascot Guineas trial?
He did, and the ground was, I think that day was so bad they couldn't use the stalls.
Right.
But he won. And then, because the weather was not so good over here, we went to Newmarket maybe 10 days, fortnight before the Guineas. And I remember a bit of work he did prior to the Guineas, and Lester owed him. And Lester got his good friend, the late Brian Taylor, to ride Ballygorn in the work, and I rode a horse called Belgrave. He was a very good lead horse. But to put a light saddle on Ballygorn to make it harder for Sir Ivor, if you like. And Brian rode with a big pair of Jolper boots on him, and he couldn't fit his feet into the irons. So Lester said, take off your boots. So he had to ride him in his stocking feet. But when we got to the end of the gallop, Susan was there with a car, and the man that rode Sir Ivor out was with her. And he'd worked very, very well now. It was the gallop that runs parallel with the Cambridge Road. And we worked from sort of with our backs to Cambridge and working in towards Newmarket.
Right.
Over about 5 furlongs, and he just went whiz by us. Anyway, Lester jumped off him, jumped into the car, and was gone. And Vincent came and said, "Where's Lester?" I said, "Well, he's got into the car and he's gone. I don't know. What did he say?" I said, "He didn't say anything." So it transpired that he got off him, went up to Warren Hill to ride Patingo in a similar bit of work for his father-in-law,
Yeah.
Fred Armstrong. And eventually he came back, and we were stabled in the links, and we were having our breakfast, and I saw him pull up us, and he beckoned to come out. So I went out to him and I said, "The boss was looking for you." Oh, he said, "I went to ride Patingo." He said, "Tell him I'll ride Sir Ivor." Right. So he said, then he turned, "Tell the lads go down and back him now before I make the announcement." So we all rushed into a taxi, went down to Newmarket and backed him. And then I called Vincent O'Brien on the phone, and I said, "Lester's been here." "What did he say?" I said, "Well, he said he's going to ride him." "I wish he'd tell me," he said. So I said, "He's gone home now, you can ring him." So he did. The rest is history.
Sir Ivor the winner, Patingo is second, it's a photograph for third.
And was a Derby then the plan after the Guineas?
Yes, it
was
was.
the obvious step, I
Obvious
suppose.
place, yeah.
Was there any worry about him staying the trip?
Well, you're always worried about a horse that has that much speed. But as Dr. O'Brien used to say, if they don't have it, they're not. I remember somebody coming one time and asking him, have you a nice horse, 1.5 mile horse for the Derby? "If I have," he said, "he's too slow." They had to have the speed. And like the good horses that he won with, all had speed. Larkspur was a true 1.5 mile horse. He won. Sir Ivor was the next one along. Nijinsky had speed, but he probably didn't have the speed of Sir Ivor.
Really? Yeah, you think that?
No. The Minstrel was a true 1.5 horse, couldn't win 2 guineas, hadn't the speed to win them. Second in the Irish and English in the Irish. Roberto got beaten in the English 2000 guineas, won the Derby a short head, only for Leicester's Magic One probably wouldn't have done it. And the Minstrel the same. And then you've Golden Fleece, who again has this type of speed. You know, and they had to be ridden to get the trip, and of course there was no better man to ride Epsom than Leicester.
I think Leicester said at the time that Sir Ivor was the best horse he'd ever ridden back then, but you think he still thinks he's the best horse he's ever ridden?
He does. I was only speaking to him there 10 days ago. We had dinner together, and somebody asked him at the table, and he said, "Oh, Sir Ivor was the best I've ever ridden," and he said Seabird was the best horse he ever saw.
After the Derby then, Sir Ivor, like what was the thinking then? Like where did he rate in terms of Derby winners, do you think, at the time?
At the time he would have been, you know, well up there with them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because the turn of foot he showed at Epsom was tremendous. I mean, if you watch the replays of it, he just went zoom past it. Remember Sandy Berkeley rode Connacht, and he thought he'd won. You know, he was half furlong down, he was in front, and this horse just went boom. Apparently he burst out crying when he came in. You know, couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So he was obviously, he was one of the best.
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
You were saying earlier, you started with Vincent in the early 60s.
61.
And you were with him for how long?
Until today he retired.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was 38 years.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of horses.
I have seen
a
lot of horses.
So where does Sir Ivor rank for you?
On top of the list.
Really? Very top?
Yes.
Because
it's just that speed that he had.
Yeah.
And the temperament he had. I mean, and then he turned out to be a very good stallion, obviously. He got Ivan Jika, she won the Art, didn't she? And he was a great broodmare sire. So yeah, he'd been top of my list.
Yeah. Would Sir Ivor be the best horse you've ever ridden at any stage in your career?
Yes, I would have to say so. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.